Gunfire, screams. The night was alive with chaos, the kind that makes your heart race and your mind scramble for clarity. Alex hit the pavement hard. The impact rattled his bones, sending a jolt of pain through his body. Pain shot up his arm, but he couldn't stay down. He knew that staying down meant certain death. Not now. Not with bullets tearing through the air. He tasted copper, blood. The metallic tang was a stark reminder of his mortality. His blood, he couldn't tell. The confusion was almost as paralyzing as the pain. He scrambled for cover behind a derelict car, its rusted frame offering little protection. The metal groaned under the strain, as if it too was aware of the danger. Across the street, figures exchanged fire, shadows dancing in the flickering neon signs of the alleyway. The rain added a surreal quality to the scene, each drop illuminated by the neon lights. Who was shooting at who? Impossible to tell in this chaos. The lines between friend and foe blurred in the darkness. One thing was clear, Alex was caught in the crossfire. Again, it seemed like trouble had a way of finding him, no matter where he went. He risked a glance at the source of the gunfire. His heart pounded in his chest. Each beat a countdown to his next move. Two groups, faces hidden in the shadows, weapons spitting fire. The muzzle flashes lit up their masked faces, revealing nothing but intent to kill. One group he thought he recognized, the other, no clue. The familiar faces brought a sense of dread, the unknown ones, a sense of unpredictability. But they were all aiming at each other. The air was thick with tension, each shot a punctuation mark in a deadly conversation, and Alex was smack dab in the middle. He was the unwelcome guest at a deadly party, and the exit was nowhere in sight. He pressed his back against the cold metal of the car. The chill seeped through his jacket, a stark reminder of the danger he was in. Every breath he took was shallow, each one a struggle to keep quiet, to remain unseen. The alley was his only refuge, a temporary shield from the chaos that hunted him. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drum against his bones. It was a relentless rhythm, echoing the urgency of his situation. He could almost hear it in his ears, a deafening beat that threatened to give away his position. Fear gripped him, tightening its hold with every passing second. He was in too deep. The files, the secrets, the lies, they had all piled up, burying him under their weight. Regret was a constant companion, a shadow that followed him everywhere. He had made choices, dangerous ones, and now he was paying the price. He always told himself he'd get out, find a way to escape this life. He had dreams of freedom, of a life unburdened by deceit and danger. Maps with escape routes, hastily packed suitcases, they were all part of his plan, a plan that seemed more like a fantasy with each passing day. But the life of a double agent, it seemed, was a sticky web. Escape felt impossible. Every move he made only seemed to entangle him further, pulling him deeper into the darkness. The locked doors, the dead ends, they were all symbols of his entrapment, of a life that had no easy exit. He'd been playing both sides, the cops and the mob, for months. It was a dangerous game, one that required constant vigilance and nerves of steel. Each side had its own demands, its own threats. He was a pawn in their game, a disposable asset in a world where trust was a rare commodity. Each side promised him a way out, a clean slate. They dangled the carrot of freedom, of a new life, just out of reach. Hope was a dangerous thing, a double-edged sword that kept him going but also kept him trapped. He wanted to believe them, to trust in their promises, but deep down he knew better. Each side demanded his loyalty. They wanted his secrets, his allegiance, his soul, the phone calls, the meetings, the constant pressure. It was all part of the game. He was a man divided, torn between two worlds that would never truly accept him, and each side he knew would kill him without a second thought. Loyalty was a fragile thing, easily broken and quickly forgotten. He was expendable, a means to an end. The lurking figures, the ever-present threat of violence, they were constant reminders of his precarious position. A wave of dizziness washed over him. The blood loss was taking its toll, sapping his strength and clouding his vision. He leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself, to gather his thoughts. But the world was spinning, a chaotic blur that threatened to swallow him whole. He was losing too much blood. The wound was deep, a cruel reminder of the violence that had become his reality. Blood seeped through his fingers, a crimson trail that marked his path. He needed help, but there was no one to turn to, no one he could trust. He needed to get out of this alley, find a way to disappear. The walls seemed to close in on him, the darkness pressing down like a suffocating blanket. Every step was a struggle, every movement a battle against the pain and the fear. He had to keep going, had to find a way to survive, but there was no escape, not while the bullets were flying. The gunfire was relentless, a deadly rain that pinned him down. He ducked behind the car, the metal his only shield against the onslaught. Running was not an option, not now, not while death was so close. He was trapped, his life hanging by the thinnest of threads, his fate in the hands of those who swore they had his back. The shadows closed in, the figures of his enemies looming large. Desperation clawed at him, a primal urge to fight, to survive. But deep down, he knew the truth. In this game of blood and trust, there were no winners, only survivors. Rain began to fall, a cold, unforgiving torrent that mirrored the turmoil inside him. Each drop felt like a needle, piercing through the fabric of the night, adding to the weight of his thoughts. The rain was relentless, much like the memories that haunted him. The city, usually a cacophony of sound, held its breath, the only noise the rhythmic drumming of the rain and the sporadic bursts of gunfire. The streets, often bustling with life, were now deserted, as if the city itself was hiding from the chaos. The flashing lights of distant police cars cast eerie shadows, creating a dance of light and dark that mirrored his own internal struggle. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood and gunpowder, a grim cocktail that turned his stomach. Each breath he took was a reminder of the violence that had erupted, a violence that seemed to cling to the very air around him. The rain did little to wash away the stains of the night. Instead, it seemed to spread them, making the scene even more macabre. He knew he couldn't stay here. The longer he lingered, the greater the risk. His mind raced, calculating his next move. The determination in his eyes was clear, but so was the fear. He had to find a way out, a way to survive. Sooner or later, one of those bullets would find its mark. The thought was a constant drumbeat in his mind, urging him to move, to act. He couldn't afford to be a sitting duck, not now, not ever. He had to move, find a new hiding place, disappear into the labyrinthine alleys of the city. The alleys were a maze, a dark, twisting network that offered both danger and refuge. He knew them well, but so did his pursuers. It was a deadly game of cat and mouse, and he was determined not to be the mouse. But as he pushed himself up, a sharp pain lanced through his arm, a reminder of the night's earlier skirmish. The pain was intense, almost blinding, but he couldn't let it stop him. He had to keep moving, no matter the cost, sending stars dancing across his vision. The world around him blurred, the rain and lights merging into a dizzying swirl. He blinked, trying to clear his head to focus on the task at hand. He slumped back against the car, his body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached, every joint felt like it was on fire. But he couldn't give in to the pain, not now. Not when he was so close to escaping. He was trapped, a hunted animal with nowhere to run. The shadows seemed to close in around him, suffocating, oppressive. He had to find a way out, a way to break free from the darkness that threatened to consume him. A flash of lightning illuminated the alley, momentarily pushing back the shadows. And in that fleeting instant, Alex saw her, Claire, standing across the street, her red dress a splash of colour in the grey downpour. She held a gun, her expression unreadable in the flickering light. But her eyes, those emerald green eyes, were locked on him. She was talking, but her words were lost in the storm. Was she there to help him? Or was she the reason he was in this mess in the first place? Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, not anymore. Not with her. Her lips moved again, and this time he could just make out the words.
Alex, trust me.
Trust. The word echoed in the hollow chambers of his mind. How could he trust anyone? Everyone he'd ever trusted had betrayed him. The cops, the mob, even Claire. He watched her, his gut churning. He needed to make a choice. Side with Claire Risk the wrath of the mob boss and pray she wouldn't betray him again, or stay put. Hope the cops arrived first, and pray they didn't decide he was too far gone to save. Each option felt like a losing gamble, but in this game, inaction was a death sentence. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. Time was running out. He had to make a decision.
He looked at Claire, her face a mask of urgency in the flashing red and blue lights. Her eyes pleaded with him, urging him to make the right choice. But what was the right choice?
His head spun. The pain in his arm was a throbbing ache, a constant reminder of his predicament. He was bleeding out, his life draining away with every tick of the clock.
Alex, we have to go now.
Going somewhere, sweetheart?
Claire's voice, sharp and insistent, cut through the rain. But before Alex could respond, a new voice, cold and menacing, sliced through the air. The mob boss. He emerged from the shadows, flanked by two hulking figures, their faces grim, their guns drawn. They'd been there all along, hidden in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to strike. Alex's stomach dropped. He was trapped, caught between a rock and a hard place.
You picked the wrong side, Alex. Now you pay the price.
He raised his gun, his eyes cold and calculating. Betrayal, it seemed, was the only language this world understood.
Let him go. He's got nothing to do with this.
Claire stepped forward, her own gun steady in her hand. The mob boss laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the empty alley.
You think you can bargain with me? You're just a pawn in this game, just like him.
Despair threatened to consume Alex. He was out of options, out of time. The cops were getting closer, their sirens a deafening wail, but would they reach him in time? Would they even care? The rain intensified, pounding down on them with relentless fury. The alley had become a stage for a deadly drama, a play with no heroes, only villains and victims. He was outmatched, outgunned, and out of luck. His life, it seemed, was about to end in this rain-soaked alley, another casualty in a war that had no winners.
Last chance, Alex. Whose side are you on?
The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats. Alex looked from the mob boss's cold, calculating eyes to Claire's desperate, pleading gaze. He knew that whatever choice he made, blood would be spilled. His blood or someone else's. He closed his eyes, the weight of his decision crushing him. Who should Alex trust, and who will pay the ultimate price?